Thought I'd make a video. Um, I really don't. This is about video about my father's wealth, house, his divorce, and what happened to his life. It's been 21 years ago that he passed away. It's been over 20 years that he died. And I don't know. I honestly believe, to the very core of myself, nobody cares. Absolutely nobody cares. Nobody cares about his money other than to have stole it. Nobody cares about $175,000 other than to use it to their advantage. And my mother is impossible to be able to be in any situation where she can handle that situation, and it's her identical twin. The people that are after me and the people that are attacking me this entire time and setting up these stages and working with the corrupt police officers are directly working with my mother's twin to have her retaliate against me, because they want to be able to control my mother, and they know that that's her identical twin, to then manipulate and take the money and have stolen everything. And ultimately they did take everything. They did steal everything. Her identical twin has no fucking right to be fooling me the entire 20 years of my life, telling me that that's my mother and that's not my fucking mother. And my mother that raised me and took care of me, cried and did all these things, and I protected her, and I protected Frankie from several rapes, including all the things that happened, has no right to cover that up. And she is very retaliating, cutthroating toward me. And they know what's going to happen, because she's directly retaliating against me and threatening me over the phone, exactly the same words that they're telling her on the other line. So she is literally, they told her, cutthroat him, I don't give a shit about this piece of shit, gut his ass out, this is what we're going to do, and steal whatever money, because she doesn't know anything about my father. For her to have shown up at my father, who passed away, who had Alzheimer's, or didn't have Alzheimer's, is horrific, because it's like a homicide. It's like you fucking just intentionally took his money and you gutted him out. You don't even know who the fuck he is or what he did. And this person is showing up, and someone is paying my mother and saying, we're going to build you a house and do all these things, but you got to help us take his money, and then we're going to put the blame on you, but then it's really us with all the money. Well, this is 21 years later down the road that whoever is doing this, they were beating me with electronic devices occasionally when I visited my mother's twin, which I thought was my mother the entire time. So, as far as I have anything to say with this, given the fact that it's been 21 years, I don't think anybody's going to give a shit. But I'm honestly even more scared of my life to think to myself, okay, my father was gay. He slept with my mother several times because I was there. Men do not. My father was gay. Okay, he was probably willing to be bisexual because he was being forced to, or felt like that's the only way he could keep a family. And let me tell you this: my mother, and I was there. I was there. For many years, my mother was, for at least over a year, my mother was saying this. My mother and my father were getting into real bad arguments. And he did begin calling her bitch a lot, that she was a bitch. And she kept on doing it. She'd come home from work, and she would cry, and she said, I'm going to take the kids and leave. And he'd always say, I'm going to keep Hector with me, because you can take everything else. No, he's going to stay with me. And the reason I talk about this is because the last year, I would say it was probably the last 2 years of his life before he committed suicide. My mother used to always tell him, "Atácate los pastillas, endrógate." And that means go drink your pills. Just drink all your pills. Just go get high. Go keep drinking your pills. Drink your pills. Drink your pills. Tócate la medicina. Necesito tu medicina. And my mother would say that, and in English that means, go drink your pills, go do drugs, go do drugs. Until he finally committed suicide, and he retaliated. But my father at that time didn't commit suicide out of depression. It was Did it attribute to his suicide? Yeah, I think it did. But it was because he was with Frankie, and I talked about this, that he had pulled a knife and he was trying to show my brother how to defend himself, and he was really fucked up. He was all drunk and drugged up with pills, and he wasn't really going to stab Frankie. And Frankie was the one that bailed him out of this, because the cops and everyone else asked him, and he said no, he was just drunk trying to show me. And then the reason that happened is because he walked into his room, and I saw him kill himself in front of me. I saw him grab a bottle of pills in his room that was on one of the shelves, and he just chugged all of it. I saw him do this in front of me, and he wasn't even paying attention to me, because I didn't know what he was going to his room for. And I don't remember at the time if I thought, well, maybe he had a gun or what he was going to do, because he was frantically going to his room for some reason. And this is why I didn't understand at the time, because I walked right in the middle of it. I didn't know what the argument was until afterwards. And he committed suicide. So when there was no divorce that was finalized, it seemed like obviously our wife and husband were getting arguments that was going to lead to a divorce, but there was no paperwork. When my father got a divorce when my mother brought divorce papers was directly after his suicide. It was within, I would say, a year or two. My mother, I talked about this, hid a bunch of paperwork. She got Frankie to hide the paperwork between his belt and go into the room. My dad was completely vegetated. He did not know he didn't know, barely could even say his name. And try to get him to sign over, I think it was divorce papers, or it was ownership of the house and all his money. I don't know how they got this, but it was with Lupa. Lupa's a transgender. Lupa's the one that set this up against him. And because she's the one that got the lawyer. And my mother at this time goes into this nursing home, and she tried several times, but I had seen my father, and they kept me out of the room. And I remember looking at the signature that my dad had. I think it was like one day when my parents weren't home, like when my mom wasn't home, and I went through their paperwork to look to see what were they trying to get my dad to sign. And I really didn't understand any of the literature and work very much. I just knew it was legal paperwork, the ownership to something. And I looked at the signature my dad had, and it was extremely, it looked intoxicated. It looked like he was drugged up. It looked like he didn't know what he was signing. And you could tell it was signature, but you could tell it wasn't his normal signature. I used to always watch, my dad had beautiful handwriting. My dad had one of the most beautiful handwriting you can ever see on a person. He was a nurse. He did so much writing. But my father had committed suicide. He is completely mentally handicapped nearly. And I don't know, I think the nurse told my mother not to go into the room, and you can't bring that to paperwork. That's the reason why I talked about that. My mom said my mom tried to hide the paperwork, and it was because they were trying to get the money very quickly and just take over the house and everything. So what happened was, that's when my mom told Frankie hide the paperwork. And my mother was basically grooming Frankie to saying, we have to get the house. We're not going to have a house to live in. We're not going to have anything. We have to get this done. So I don't know whatever happened with this. To this day, I still don't know whatever happened, whether someone took the power of attorney over my father, or the lawyers or whoever agreed that, oh, that's a signature, well, you could just take all the shit. Or somebody else intervened and said, wait a minute, he doesn't know what's going on. You can't do this to him. I don't know. To this day, I still don't know what happened. So Frankie and my mother then started to do this by herself. She did this on her own with Lupe, where she got divorce papers, and she said that she was going to get a divorce from my father. My father was now in a nursing home at this point. I'm 15 years old. It's over in Carrollton when my mom's finalized her divorce. This is what happened. Now, I don't remember my father signing any paperwork inside the nursing home ever that I was ever told or anything. Now, the only person that I knew that had the power of attorney over my dad, Raymond Palomo, was Frankie. And he was in the Navy in Japan, and he disappeared. Never heard from him. Never heard anything, letters. So, my dad, basically, I was told that when I was about late 14 to 15, no later than, I didn't pass 15 years old. I was about 14 to 15 years old. But I know that, I remember this because I was with my dad when my dad told me that he was happy that he got a divorce. My dad was always so happy he got a divorce from my mom. He was, yeah, I finally got rid of her. I was like, yeah, I don't want her. I'm glad I got a divorce. And by this time, he was still recovering, but he wasn't in a mental... I wish they would have been able to record and have conversations with him and put it on videotape, because he seemed very intelligent by this time. He made a remarkable recovery. He could still remember things. He could still write pretty well, but he was still left with some sort of memory loss. But to this day, I don't know if... I don't know anything about divorce. When people get a divorce and one person is brain dead and they don't want to be around him, I don't know if you can get a divorce with somebody legally and you don't have to worry about it. You just go to a lawyer and say, well, he can't take care of himself, I'm going to get a divorce, and it's over with. But my mom told me that it was finalized that when I was 14 to 15 years old that the divorce was finalized. But the way that my mother used to talk about that they got a divorce seemed very much like a lie. Like, it seemed very sketchy. She would just say, oh yeah, we got a divorce. Yeah, estamos divorciados. So I don't know to this day if they got a divorce. I don't know who got the power of attorney. I don't know. So if my mom, look, the money I understand is gone, the house is gone, but this is $175,000 that my dad has. $50,000 in cash from ING stocks that was valued in some sort of cash, and that had some sort of revenue growth to it. I still don't know to this day what that revenue growth, it was like. It wasn't very much. I think it was like $600 or like every 6 months or $1,000 or something. It was something like that, but I don't know what that revenue was. Now, the house value was valued at $125,000, okay, when it got sold. Where did all this money and house possession go into the power of? Who got the power over that? Because if I'm not his son, and my mom claimed to have divorced him, and my mom has an accident, what is happening? What's going on? That means that every penny that my father had, Raymond Palomo, and house, every single thing he had was stolen. Everything. And he was left alone in a nursing home to die. Why did they... You know what I was told? I was told that the reason they put him in a nursing home in Fort Worth was because it was the only nursing home that was allowing smoking. I don't know who told Frankie this. I don't know who told my mom this. But the reason that my dad left the nursing home in Carrollton, because my dad used to smoke all the time, was because they didn't allow people smoke anymore there. And so you had to find a nursing home that allowed elderlies to smoke. So Fort Worth was the only place that had a nursing home that allowed my father to smoke cigarettes. It was the only place. So I don't know the truth to it. I don't know any of that. So I don't know any of that information, who set this up. But you have $175,000 from an old man that this identical twin is waiting for my father to die and claiming to be my mother and fooling me the entire time, even while he's right before he dies. And I don't know if my father actually finalized his divorce or if they even got a divorce. To this very day, I don't know if my mother got a divorce, if my mother was lying. So if my biological mother, in my opinion, I don't blame her. I don't blame her, and the reason I don't blame my biological mother, and they keep shooting me in my rectum and my ass because, oh, you want to take control of everything, is because there was arguments. There was real bad arguments, with my mom and dad, and they weren't even sleeping in the same bed. And my mom didn't want to be with him anymore, and it was because he was decaying and he was getting old, and she just wanted to get rid of him. But she needed a house to take care of us kids, and so I want to talk about this because my father committed suicide, and I just know that when you encourage people to commit suicide intentionally, vocally like that, and they commit suicide, you can be held as a criminal. Because I've seen teenagers and 20-year-olds encourage kids to kill themselves, and they actually did commit suicide, and the kid gets charged as an adult, for applying suicide to that person. But I think it's important for me to talk about. I just felt them shoot something in my heart, and it thrumbled like that, and it's an electronic device that they're doing. I wanted to say this because to this very day, $175,000, and my mother had a wreck, her leg crushed. Her twin doesn't know anything about my dad, doesn't know, and she was fooling myself and my father the whole fucking time. And I remember I talked about that. I went to a restaurant with Lupe, and I thought it was my mother, and it wasn't my mother. I thought it was my mother the whole time, but when I look back on it now, and I'm thinking, that wasn't my fucking mother. That was not my fucking mother. Because I remember how disgusting and retaliating she was looking at my father. And she was just like, I fucking take everything you have, I don't give a fuck you. Like, it was nasty. And I remember feeling, and the vibes and reaction that she was giving to my father was nasty. It wasn't good with Lupe. And I was just tolerating it because I could not see my father. I wanted to see my father. I wanted to visit him. And I was so close to him. And I'm all of a sudden, it had been a year since I had seen him. Or 6 months. I think it was 6 months since I had seen him. So I wanted to talk about this. Whoever hired the lawyers, or whoever played a part of my mom's identical twin, and whoever this team of people were that supplied the money are the ones that stole all my dad's financial money, assets, financial cash, and house. Stole everything because I was put to work for it. And, obviously she doesn't have her identical twin placed with her. But I know they just shot my finger violently because they don't want me saying who to who, but it is the people that are supplying the money to my mother. That's who stole the money. That is who's organizing it with the identical twin to retaliate and give me death wishes. She's saying very disgusting things that I can't even talk to her over the phone. They already know when I get to Dallas and I go to my apartment, they already know I'm going to throw away a whole bunch of shit, just not have my shit over there and cluttered over there. They already know that. The people that are listening to me right now and tapping my phone and recording me, they're sending the messages directly to the SWAT team that's working with my mother. And they're not working with my mother because they're retaliating against me because I am the absolute truth and existence of this person. It doesn't change the fact that if you gave my mother a house, I can't control that. But if you came and you took my father's house and you took $50,000 and I'm there for 20 fucking years, you stole everything that he ever had and you threw him in a fucking casket and you manipulated the situation. And my mother has a first grade education. She had her twins taken from her, but it's her identical twin that they're using to retaliate against me in order for them to get away with what they did. So I want to talk about this, that in my opinion, at 41 years old, I believe that it is complete. It's almost like a sense of murder. It's what it feels like. It feels like the sense that we threw him away the way my mom had to throw away my sister. And she's already called Michaela. She's already retaliating, calling me that she's a bitch. She goes, I don't know who that fucking bitch is. And she's retaliating against vengeful. I know her vibes. And I said this when I was in my early 20s. Something's kind of wrong. There's something, you change. I could not, she was dispersing evil, hatred toward me. in a way that my mother was never like. So, and I said this several times. I asked, like, when I was 27 years old and I borrowed like $100 or it was like $100 I borrowed, and I was at the movie theater. And when I went there in my car, she was driving Lucille's truck, and it wasn't my mother; it was her twin. And when I looked at my mother, she let me borrow the money, and I get back in my car, and we're parked like this, and we're at the very back. We're at the very big parking lot at Cinemark 17 near the highway in front of everybody. There's no cars around us. It's just like an empty parking lot, and it was like 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, and my mother let me borrow the money. And I get back in my car, and I talked to her for a minute. I said, something seems wrong about you. It's not wrong, but it's just something's different about you. I don't know what's wrong. And all of a sudden, I feel like shitting. Like somebody was shooting something at my body, and it's like I had diarrhea, like I had needed to shit. And immediately when I go like this, like somebody was shooting something, and I'm in my car, I look at my mother, and I sit, and she looks over at the dashboard, and she just goes, "Oh," and she grabs her seatbelt and she does this. So I wanted to talk about this, that whoever is doing this is applying my mother's identical twin, because they are calculating this to turn everything against me. They want to make it look like I'm after my mother to steal her money, to take advantage of the situation for myself, and that I was only a criminal and I was a thief. And that is what they're doing. They're doing this because they wanted to get away with what they did to my father and rearrange anything he had ever wished and said, and had put me to do labor the entire 20 years. He was my father. I wasn't a labor hurt to him. So whatever team, whatever people did this, and let me tell you this, they did this because they wanted to cover up the rapes as well. But my mom's identical twin, this bitch is guttering me out completely and saying some of the most unbelievable, hatred, disgusting things to me over the phone. I do not want to talk to her over the phone anymore. And I'm very terrified because she's saying guttering pig shit. Like, she's literally reacting like a fucking dog trained to then retaliate against me. Like, it's very hateful. Like, her tone, the words she's choosing, the way that the patterns, they're directed in pure hate. It's not control. It's not just control. It's hate. And they've been doing this and lying to me for over 20 years. Because my mom's identical twin, the one that's retaliating, wants to be able to steal everything and then fool the situation and get away with it. So this is how they're manipulating the situation. I don't know what court system. I don't believe there is a court system or a lawyer in any way that you could go to a court that would ever allow that to happen legally. If I got thrown to the curb, and now they're shooting me on my left heel right now, they're shooting me on my bottom heel, retaliating against me. Remember I told you left means Jesus and all? Well, this is how they retaliate against me. They beat me not to say anything. Now look, now they're shooting me right now on my thumb, and it's twitching. This is what they're fucking doing. If I don't do what they tell me to fucking do, they can begin beating me. But like I said, this is like a murder dumping body case. Now, I have to say this because I don't know who's involved in my mom's life. I don't know who recovered the twins and whatever happened. So if I got thrown out of the picture legally, okay, they just say I did get thrown out of the picture because legally they say, well, you're just worthless, Hector. You're just a laborer. You're not his son. Okay, well, they won. Why are you giving Raymond Palomos all this money in his house over to my mom's twin? If my mom has dementia, if my mom doesn't have dementia, why are you giving it all to my mother? And I'm not signing any paperwork. I didn't sign any paperwork at all. I did not sign, to this day, I did not sign any paperwork releasing my dad's house money. I didn't sign anything. I just got kicked out of the house. My mom's twin gave me a phone call, which I thought was my mom at the time, and gave me a large paycheck, and that was it. And said, okay, bye. I gave you that money. Like I was a laborer. So, let's just say, whatever. That's because that did happen. But I'm saying, if I got thrown out of the picture, who and why is all my dad's money and assets entirely going to my mom's twin control? Who is doing that? You've dumped my body, but why are you taking his money and his rightful wishes? Why are you doing that? Now they just shot me in my left butt cheek, like biting me in the ass, like saying, yeah, you don't want anything to bite you in the ass, did you? And they're slightly doing it. Who stole the money? Who stole the money? It's the attorneys, it's the people it's the group that she's working with. Whatever people that organize this is the one that decided to steal everything that my father had. If my father, I could tell you 100 million times this, my father would have probably wanted to kill himself again if he found out that somebody gave all his money and all his house to my mother. That is the last thing my father wanted, to give everything to her, the house and the money. Let me tell you this, the $50,000, I don't know where they went, but I know that the Dodge Intrepid brand new car that my mother had, that I went into the parking lot, we went to go buy that car together. Frankie was not with us, I don't think. He might have been, yeah, I think he was, but I don't remember. I just know Julian and me were there, but I think, yeah, Frankie was there. And one of the occasions, because we went to this car dealership more than once. And believe it or not, this is when I talk about that my mom was acting very frantic. It was like, here, sign it. You see that? Listen. It was so crazy looking to see my mother try to haggle my dad out of the money, but I knew that it was for a family car, and my dad had committed suicide, and I'm not kidding you, this is real life. My father was in diapers, Pampers, when we went to that dealership. He had brown slacks, and like he looked like a petty old man who still kind of wanted to continue life, but didn't realize his condition. You could see the plastic. I swear to you, you could see the plastic coming out of his. And when we walked, you could hear the crinkles of the diapers that he was in. We get into the car, and we get with the dealership person, and we're driving, testing out the car, and they begin telling us, and the car was $25,000. Or it was like anywhere between $25,000 to $28,000. That's what the car cost. Altogether, I don't know who paid for this car, who got it, but to my understanding, it could have been possible that my mom got somehow the paperwork out of my dad's account and bought the car. That's how they got the car. Okay? I don't know the story to this. But like I said, if nobody cares, whoever it was, okay, well, let's just say he took that money. Once they bought that car, once that happened, once that car was bought, this is what happens. Once that car is bought, then what happens? Well, within less than a year, less than a year and a half, I would say less than a year and a half, less than 18 months, my father gets placed in a nursing home. So I'm going to take your money and I'm going to throw you in a nursing home, and that's what happened. And I don't know if somebody bought my mother a car. I don't know, because there was two people. There was two white people. One guy that he kind of looked gay, heavy, sort of chubby a little bit, car dealership, and there was a white woman with blonde hair. No, she was a white woman. I don't know if she had maybe dirty blonde hair. It was light-colored brown hair. She was flabbergasted by looking, because I was standing in the cubicle the entire time, almost. And I remember looking at my dad and where my mom was, and this lady was looking at my mother like he doesn't know what day of the week it is, and you're just trying to get his money. Like, it looked really bad. It did look really bad on my mom. And this lady knew. And my mom was acting very frantic at the time. It's like, sí, yeah, this is, él quiere comprar la carro, yeah, él tiene dinero, yeah, aquí, mira. So, in my opinion, I think my mother was trying to do the right thing in a lot of cases because we needed a vehicle for a family, and I don't know if she was trying to spend the money because my mother was so paranoid because she knew that Sarah and Ken were going to take the money. That's why my mom wanted to hurry up, because she knew Ken and Sarah had so much control and had attachments to my dad, connections. They knew that Michael and Robert were going to come and take over my father because they had a lot of money and they were college educated. That's why I believe to this day my mother was frantic, because there was so much paranoia with Sarah getting into the picture, because they knew that she could take control. They knew she would take control, she would dominate, and she would squander my fucking mother, because she was nasty to us as kids and she was nasty to my mother. They knew, because she already, by this time, by this time it was a very hostile situation. It was like a year. It was like within a year of that. Look, my sister dying, the girl that had Down syndrome. This all happened with such a short period of time. But I wanted to say, like I said, I don't think anybody gave a shit. But the only people that did care is, I think, that the people that showed up with all this money and bought my mother's dream makeover house used the lawyers and psychologists to get away with what they did, and they're using to brainwash my mother and to put me as the enemy. The reason they wanted is because they knew that I could possibly have connections to this money, could help my future, and they didn't want me to spoil of what intentions they had for my dad's burial. And they would turn it against my mom's identical twin, because she has no money and she's trying to fetch out her own life and own family. That's the way that they could turn it against me and get away with it, because that's my mom's identical twin. It looks exactly like her, but it's not her. I don't know what court system in any court would ever allow my mother to act like her for 20 years, pretending to be her. I don't know who would do this. But they're turning everything, and they did everything in the beginning to turn everything against me, to steal the money, to get away with what they did, and gutter me out and take my money and my portion. So I never signed any paperwork. I never signed any paperwork at all. Now, I don't know if my uncle got involved. I think he said he didn't really want to get involved a lot with that situation. He did, I think, help a little bit, but to my understanding, he just didn't want to get involved very much. He was just, because it was causing a lot of problems at his work side, and at the time I was 19 years old, and I had to go live with him, and it was just a really bad situation, and he was just dealing with 3 kids, and then I'm living there, and I'm 19 years old, and my mom is just, basically, she's like trying to throw me away. She's just like trying to get rid of me. Even when we go there, she just like trying to dump me, like just get rid of me. The way she's behaving, stop! The way that this guy's threatening me right now. He's shooting the electronic devices right now at me. The way I think my uncle possibly got involved, I remember he said he just didn't want to deal with it, because he had a lot of job. He was doing a lot of work. He was doing a lot of shit. At the time he had like 5 workers, and he was like getting up at 6 in the morning, working like 10, 12-hour days. He was working long hours, and he was a boss. But the reason that I believe, not only was the family, my mom knew that Sarah and Ken would take over, and that family would. And she was scared of Michael and Robert coming, because they had threatened her over the phone that they were going to take the money and they were going to control my father. It was just really fucking bad. And they had said this over the phone. Now I'm 13 years old, my dad commits suicide, and they're trying to figure out what nursing they're going to put him in, what's going to happen to us. We don't know what's going to happen. But I wanted to talk about this because they're using her twin, and I don't ever want to talk to this person again. And whoever's doing this and hired these people, I don't want to be in an entanglement with someone who's claiming. I do not like calling someone my mother and calling her mom and saying I love you to someone that isn't my mother. My biological mother, Celestina Melendez, my mother who got ran over by a forklift, the mother that raised me when I was 10 years old, 5 years old, 15 years old, that mother I do love, and I feel comfortable with. I do not love saying the word, oh, I love you. No, you're not my mother. I don't know who you are, who's paying you to do this, but I don't feel comfortable saying that. You're not, because these people, this person has been doing this for a very long, fooling me, and I don't know who's doing this. But they're hiring a psychological team of people to retaliate against me vengefully, to turn everything against me in order to clean up for Sarah and Ken and the other 2 kids he had. Now, Robert, I'm telling you, my mom was very scared and always knew that Robert and Michael, stop! And Sarah were after the money. This guy downstairs keeps threatening me about my dad's money, and that's why he keeps hitting the electronic devices at me. I have to say this, that at 41 years old, I don't think anybody cares. I don't think anybody cares about my dad's money. I think they stole it, whoever it was that organized it, and knew they could get away with it. And they sent everybody to attack me because they knew that I was hopeless. I was literally in a pack of hyenas. And I was thrown in a pit of snakes, and they knew I wouldn't survive. They knew I would not survive. They knew everyone was going to attack me. They knew I was hopeless because they had me on lockdown. They had me on lockdown very bad. Now, I have to say this because my mom knew. I was with my father. My father was in diapers when he bought that car. I swear to you, my father was in diapers. You could see the plastic lining that was slipping out of his belt. And you could hear the crinkles. And I remember being so embarrassed because I was scared my father was going to shit himself while we're there as a family. Like, just shitting all over himself. And you could hear the diapers. I promise to God, and stop! This piece of shit downstairs keeps threatening me because he knows I'm talking about my dad's money. He wants control over it. He wants to be able to force me not to say nothing and condition me in order to make sure it pans out for Sarah and Ken and his white supremacy. This is seriousness. I talk. It's $175,000, and this piece of shit downstairs now is doing this. He looks just like he's a skinny version of Ken Cooper. He's a white guy, looks like Tales from the Crypt. This is guy downstairs right now. I don't think anybody cares about my dad's money, about the safety, his credibility. This is $175,000. I never signed any paperwork. I never once signed any paperwork. So for me to have any type of credit to anyone give had to be entirely by someone's opinion that was above my mother. Who's above my mother? Her identical twin has no connections to my father. I don't know who you are, where you were, where you came from, who did this. But you don't just show up into the picture and just start saying where $175,000 is going to go. Then who is deciding who decided? My mom can't decide that she's going to give me, mathematically, I'm going to give you $5,000, $6,000 for the house. Someone else is deciding who's doing that for my mother. Who gave my mother to do that? Who gave my mother to do that? Who told her to do that? Who told her to do that? It's the psychologists and these lawyers that are hiding behind that have all the money in the world that stole my father's money to get away for what their purpose of what they want my dad's life to have been. Now, they knew, and they know to this day, this is all going to turn around against me. And when I figure this out, if I ever do, they want to make sure they point the finger at me and saying I'm a thief and I'm an evil person now trying to retaliate against my mother. And that's not what the case is. And it's these lawyers and psychologists and everyone that they're sending and organizing against me. I'm 41 years old. And I don't think anybody cares. I don't think anybody cares about what my father, they literally threw him in a casket. It wasn't even a proper burial. It wasn't a very respectful one. It was a proper burial, but it wasn't a respectful one. But I will tell you this, there's a huge part of me, not because it's my mother that I feel, it's because I know that her intentions was family, and I do believe that my mother was in a bad mental situation where there's just no way. But I just know that the psychologists and lawyers got up and they organized this. They all organized to steal all my dad's money. Now, I can tell you this right now. I said this many years ago to several people, and I told Kenneth this one day. Johnny and Luca were laughing, slightly giggling, when they were walking out of my dad's funeral. And Julian heard them and got mad. And Robert Palomo and Richard Palomo then approached me like they were trying to comfort us and comfort Julian, and said, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Because they were giggling and laughing like we're going to just steal everything we want. And they comforted us because we were hopeless. And they did. Richard Palomo is my dad's brother. And Robert Palomo is my dad's stepson, but they were never a part of our life ever. They visited once, sent one Christmas cards, never heard from them. Spoke to them over the phone. I don't even think, maybe more than once, if that, and maybe if it was, maybe for like a few seconds, and that was it. That was it. So I thought it was important for me to talk about this because I don't know who stole this money, but there's something that was so prominent about my mother and the money. She knew Sarah and Ken would take control, and she knew that she was scared of Robert and very scared of Sarah. Very scared of Sarah because Ken was a police officer and they had high ties to white people and the lawyers and high connections to people. She was always like, you're not going to take the money from us and all this other shit. That's why I believe my mom was urgently, because she knew my dad was going to die soon. I don't want to give this money to Sarah and Ken. I'm sacrificing my life and my kids to give this old man a life. And I don't want this to go to them because they knew, and so it's better to spend the money and get the money for us to have something for us. Have something for us. Have something for us to have a better life. That's why. But her identical twin is responsible. I don't know what her mental state is, but they're getting her to make a lot of threats at me. It's real vulgar. Like, I feel very frightened in the sense of this person is not manipulating nasty. I don't. It's hard for me to understand, even if she's a twin. It's like an evil twin. I don't know how to explain this, but other than a very dark language, very, very dark, nasty language. Now, I know that she can't come up with this by herself, and I'm not blaming her on her. She is making a choice to be vengeful toward a son that doesn't belong to her. It's the psychologist and it is the lawyers that are telling her, that are tapping my phone and retaliating against me because they want their own position about what happened to this money and story for Ken and Sarah Cooper, and to retaliate because they knew my dad was gay. They want to retaliate against me. These lawyers and psychologists are doing this to my mom's identical twin to retaliate against me. It has nothing to do with me. I am nothing more than the hero. I am nothing more than everything that ever happened in that house to tell you what really did happen. And it was some of the most crucial, unbelievable things, stories. My father was a World War II veteran, Navy, graduate from the University of Kansas, and I told you all these stories and I drew them. They wanted to retaliate against me to cover everything up because they didn't want me to have the money. They didn't want me to have any of it. They can bitch my mother and her chicken hen, and they knew that. But they want to make sure I don't get anything. They know Julian's gay. They know Frankie was gay. They want to make sure I don't get anything. And I wasn't going to get anything. And it's to retaliate by paying my mom's identical twin and buying them that house to then say, we gave you this and we did all this, so now take everything away from Hector. Hector was an enemy. You see what a bad person he is? And so they cover it. I feel very desperation for my biological mother, and they keep shooting me with these electronic devices. They stop. This fucking pig, this fucking worthless piece of shit. This is how they control how much money they want and how much they want to divide and control the situation. So I think it's important for me to talk about. I'm 41 years old. I don't even think it's even legal for me to even be able to try to do anything because it's already been 20 years. You can't go back 20 years and says, oh, where's my money? You can't. Whatever these people did, they did it successfully because they paid high-priced attorneys and they used psychologists to corner me. They wanted to make sure I wasn't going to get anything. My mother does not have the ability mentally to really say any of these situations. So who got the power of attorney over my mother? Why are you giving, if I'm out of the picture, why are you giving all my dad's money and house to my mom's identical twins? Who the fuck are you to show up to get a free house and free money? Why is my mother, even if she was, let's just say she's perfect, she recovered and she was perfectly fine. Why is my mother get every single thing and I don't sign any paperwork? I don't sign any documents saying that my portion of the house I'm releasing. I didn't sign anything. If anybody wants to value my father's life, that I think wants justice for a human life, and wants to recover $175,000 portionally correctly for me, Jillian, and Frankie, and my mother, please do. And I would like to be a participant in that. Other than that, if no one ever does, it's all gone. But I'm not going to be talking to my mom's twin, her threatening my life and crazy and what these other people are doing to me. Because the gay community and these transgenders are retaliating everywhere I go. Walgreens, Walmart, the bus, everywhere I go, in retaliation and using my mother's identical twin as an impression to retaliate against me, to do what her twin says. That's not my mother. I got on the bus earlier and there was a guy that looks like Ken Cooper and he was crying, he's trying to play off my father and act like Ken Cooper, so that he dwindles the emotion that I ever had for my feelings for my father, Raymond Palomo. There was no less anything. He was my full father. He was my full father. I loved my father very much, and I was very close to him. But as far as anything can say with this circumstance, they're using my mother, and they've been doing this for a long time. And look, I believe that my mother's identical twin is in a mental state that she can function on her own. She is very retaliating, cutthroating, disgusting, and has been like that, and I've been dealing with this for many, many years and not saying anything. Every time that I was living underneath the bridge and I spoke to her, every time I was living at a park, she always expressed the most unconcerned, guttering trash to my life over the phone, and I could not say anything because I was being treated like that by the people that were controlling me. So I had no choice to live on my knees and watch how her fucking twin was just throwing trash at me over the phone in words and showing any very little concern about my life. So it was very nasty. My mother was not like that. My mother was not like that when I was younger. When my mom left when I was 16 years old to go live with her boyfriend in Garland, my mother was like giving me the house, and I told her I didn't want to live here by myself. I told her this. I'm sure there was cameras. Everyone would come over and say, "Where's your mother?" And I'd have to lie to them saying, "Oh, my mother just thinks I'm responsible enough." I told my mother when she gave me the keys, and I said, "I don't want to live here. I can't live here by myself. You're just leaving me here all by myself at 16 years old, and I'm in high school." So, like I said, at late 16 years old, my mother just left. At 17 years old, my mother left full time, just not even there at all. So, they keep shooting this electronic device into my chest. So I want to talk about this. If anyone cares about the $175,000 and what's right of a human life that was thrown away into a garbage can for the values of Sarah and Ken and the white supremacist Cooper family, because they're marshals and they're police, please do something. I honestly believe, like I said, it's too late. 20 years down the road, you can't go to an attorney's office and say, oh, it's what happened to my money. It doesn't matter what conversation they have. It doesn't matter what they say. Oh, well, we thought this. No, you didn't think anything. What you thought is you said, Hector, we don't want to give you nothing. We want to make this benefiting for Sarah and Kim. That's what they fucking did it for. And they wanted my mother to be gutted out like a pig and me gut out like a pig because my dad was gay, but he was having sex with my mother. But Frankie was being raped for a long time. They needed to help Miguel out. And Diana, who raped Frankie. So I want to talk about this. It was them that did this. It was them that did this. They are threatening my mother. My biological mother does not have the mental well-being to understand what these people are doing, and they're using her twin to retaliate and cutthroat me vengefully. Now, I don't have a problem with the idea of still communicating with my biological mother. But if it's going to cost me my life, I don't want anything to do with her anymore. If it's going to cost me being threatened, I don't want to do anything. I'm not going to suffer. I'm not going to go through this type of hell that I'm already going through, living on bridges, not knowing if I got 5 more years left. I don't care. I'll let them steal the money. I'll let them take whatever they want because the police are in on this. The people that are gathering, the homosexuals that are targeting me when I go to the grocery stores and Walmarts and all these places, everywhere I go, on the bus, everywhere, they're going to make sure that they're able to steal this money and they're going to go after it, just like they did many years ago. And it's only gotten worse. It's getting vengefully worse. All these people over here that live on this other side, they're listening to me and they're getting radioed all the information to them. They're after my father's money, this real estate, to say what happens with my mom's decisions. Now, look. If somebody's already taken full power of attorney over my biological mother, then I understand that there's something that I can do. But I wouldn't want to make any decisions unless Frankie and Julian were there. I don't want to make any decisions. I don't want to be anywhere involved in that unless Frankie and Julian were there with me. Like we were at my dad's funeral, signing paperwork. I don't want to be anywhere. I don't want to do anything like that. The only way is if Frankie and Julian are there. But I'm very fearful. They're retaliating against me. You don't understand the suffering I'm going through. I don't want to listen to my mom's identical twin to threaten me anymore and act nasty words to me anymore. I just don't, because I'm having a lot of people threaten me at the grocery stores, the clerks, the people. It's very vengeful. They're all in retaliation. Just 3 days ago, I went to go do my taxes, 3 days ago, and they were bringing up my dad, Frankie, being raped anally, saying, we don't, they were talking about the smell and trying to add actors that were there for Frankie, that were there for Sarah Cooper, claiming that Sarah Cooper didn't know, and that's bullshit. I was fucking there. And they were saying that, we could smell all that. We didn't smell anything. And they're trying to train me and abuse me. They had Ken Cooper's representatives and Sarah Cooper's representative maliciously acting very harassing toward me when I got there. And they're after my dad's money and after the cover-up for Frankie being raped. I was here in St. Albans, Vermont, to take care of the taxes, so... Like I said, I'm making phone calls. Every time I pick up the phone call for taxes, libraries are all threatening me over the phone. All of them. They're literally, and they're screeching out the phones really loud so it sounds very threatening. And they're saying, yeah, I got you. And they're wanting to cover up and steal my mother's and my father's remains of money and decisions. So they're coming after me for it. I'd rather let them steal whatever they want and I'm not, because they're doing this, and my mother's identical twins is very mentally aware of what they're doing. Now, the only reason I wouldn't blame my mother's identical twin is because she's being threatened herself, or she's a lesbian. If she's a lesbian, bingo, eureka, that's why. That's exactly fucking why. If she's a lesbian and she doesn't have her own kids, that's why. She wanted to feel she could take over my father because he was gay, and then she's a lesbian. So if she's a lesbian, bingo, that's why. Because you want to help your faggots and you want to help gays. That's the homosexuality spirit. My mother was not like that. My mother was not like that. My mother used to tell me shit about gay people. Oh, es gay, es mujoto. She would tell me shit like this. So I thought it was important. And I want to say something. I remember also thinking, if my mother was such in a bad situation, did she ever try to come on to Miguel? And I think she did. I'm trying to think to myself if she tried to come on to Miguel and Miguel nodded his head and said, and did this like he wasn't interested. Miguel Rivera, the guy that raped Frankie. And I remember the way that my mother used to wave at him like in the very early days. So I thought it was important for me to say something. That's how predatory in this bad situation my mother is in. So if anybody cares about my father's $175,000 real estate money, please do something, because to me, they threw him in a trash can and took everything away. And they took everything away from me. They disposed of him and his wishes to give the money to who they wanted to decide where the money and house is going to go to for their benefit and their movement. Her twin doesn't get any of it. Doesn't belong to any of this. But she's showing up and fooling me and fooling my dad. I shot the shot on my leg, but I think it's important. Lupe was not in any good situation when they showed up to that nursing home. It's $175,000. It took a lifetime to earn that money. There was a lady that died in that house. Well, she didn't technically die, but she died. She went to the hospital and died. Okay, that was my dad's first wife. So if anybody wants to say or do anything, like I said, I think it would be in the best of interest to care for a living human being that worked his whole life, that cared for his family, and had his decisions that he wanted, that I could participate on what his life was. Because he's being thrown in a trash can and thrown away. And it was the psychologist, and they got my mom's identical twin to play along with it. Every word that she has shared, every time, I'm telling you, when I was in the car with her, it was always this nasty vibe. The last time I ate at Taco Bell, when I went there, my mom's identical twin was acting, I'm talking about like, this is my money, this is my house, and I'm here to protect Celestina. She just showed up into the picture, and in fact, I'm thinking to myself, was that even my mother who picked up Sock's dead body? And I remember talking to my mother, and I don't know if this is true. I thought it was my mother. I was 16 years old. Maybe I was 16 years old. I was late 15 to early 16 years old when my dog died, Socks. And Julian saw, because he was looking out the window with me, that Socks died, and I called my mom from work. I thought it was my mom. And I'm thinking, at 16 years old, was that my mother's twin that showed up? Because I'm trying to think if my mother's character would have been ruthless enough to pick up a dead body like that in the way that she was. And I don't think it was. I think it was my mom's twin. It could have been my mother, but my mother was, the way that she behaved was heartfelt. Not Jesus felt, the way that this guy is doing it downstairs and beating me with the electronic devices. That's not what the situation. For the past 20 minutes, they're shooting an electronic device. It's cringing inside my cranium and chest, and it feels like crying. But I wanted to say this, if anyone can help, I don't want to do anything unless Frankie and Julian there. I don't want to fucking do anything. I don't want to get involved in any way unless Frankie and Julian, because we have to represent our father and what portion any of that and what happened. But I just know the psychologists and these people are thieves. And they're the ones that are using the twin to get away with what they want. That's my money. That's Frankie's money. That's my mom's money. I believe that half of everything goes to my dad. Half of everything goes to my mom. My dad's half. What legal standards do I have? Me, Frankie, and Julian. I'm not signing any paperwork. What rights do I have to say, if my mom got into a car wreck, if my mom goes to a funeral home, and she dies, they'll call me possibly to say who's going to bury her, who's going to claim her dead body. They'll call me because I'm her biological son. I'll be one of the people they call. You can call me when she's in a dead body for Ken and Sarah Cooper, and for this guy downstairs. You can call her for that, but you can't call me for anything else. You're just wanting to throw her dead body over to me for Ken and Sarah and white supremacy glory, and to get away with this faggot shit. Now, this guy downstairs is beating me with these electronic devices with the crucifix, and this person across the other side of the hall. But I wanted to say something. If anyone wants to value my father's life and all this money, please do. Because you're throwing him in a casket, and I'm not able to say anything about a man that I took care of. I was there, a suicide, and all these things. Why is a total stranger taking over my biological mother and using her twin to manipulate the situation while you stay comfortable? And I'm being fucking attacked ruthlessly and lose my life. Then when I call my mom thinking it's her and it hasn't been her, and she's using these guttering death sentencing words, it's very disgusting. Who's telling her to say those things to me? She doesn't have to be calling me, and I wouldn't have to be calling her. If I move on with my life, when you got your money and you got everything you need, I don't want to be. You're not going to threaten my life. I've already had cancer once. You've been threatening me long enough. And this is never going to stop. The electronic devices, this is never going to stop. They're going to wait until I die or develop cancer. But I'd rather live in some sort of peace than be threatened with life and having people in the streets threaten my life. You've already shown me death and murder. And that's in a very serious situation. Frankie was being raped. I'd love to be there if there's professional psychologists to be able to talk with my biological mother, Frankie and Julian. And they're shooting me with electronic devices in my chest again, huh? I would love to be there with my mom, the psychologist, Frankie and Julian, and talk about what attorneys, what counselors, what my point of view is, what happened, what Frankie's point of view is, and what Julian's point of view is. If anyone cares about this old man, because they threw him in a fucking nursing home, and he was in, I don't know how the situation, but it's all stolen money. All of it's stolen, huge amounts of stolen money. And whoever bought my mother this Dream Makeover's house and everything, I think it's a beautiful thing, but I don't think they should have had the right to take all that money and say, if that's your mother, then that's your mother, not mine anymore. So, but I just know that I'm trying to defend and protect my mother, and I'd love to be able to protect her and tell her, but I've been excluded and I'm an enemy, and only an enemy. These people on the streets, the bus drivers, all these are retaliating against me so much, and they're people that are over the phone. Every phone call I make, every time I talk to my mom's biological twin, she keeps saying and wants me to call her mother. You're not my mother. You're not my mother. And I know, I don't think in any legal standards that's okay. In any way. In any fucking way. I don't think anybody will probably allow that in any legal standards to say you can just tell him you're his mother and lie to him for 20 fucking years. For 25 years. But at the end of the day, his body got dumped in a dumpster, and y'all took all his fucking money. Y'all did this to him. And I'm the one defending him and my mother. And y'all are the ones that stole this money. You're the psychologists, you're the lawyers, you're the Ken and Sarah Cooper fighters and the faggots and transgenders that put this shit together to do this to my father. You stole the fucking money. You took this money and you thieved it out of an old man that you thought you didn't know better. I was there for 20 years. I went to the nursing home for 7 years. You stole this money. You are a thief and you're a guttering, disposing body piece of shit. All you motherfuckers that did this. Now you're threatening me with the police, and you're threatening me with his neighbors, and you're threatening me when I go to the grocery stores, and that's why I'm living on the fucking streets. I've only been nice to my mother's twin over the phone when I'm sleeping underneath a fucking bridge, and she's fucking, I can hear the joy that she's having over the phone that I'm merely digging in a fucking trash can. saying, yeah, that's what you get, because my mother, the day that after my father died, my mother's twin was in the car with Frankie, and she was like, I thought she could possibly pull a gun and like shoot me. She was like yelling at my brother Frankie, él me miró con yo soy un perra, él me miró, aquí te dejo, aquí te tengo arrestado y pinche basura, te tiro aquí, pinche pendejo estúpido, que te mueres, cabrón. Ay, mira que me hiciste mirar muy mal con Sarah y Ken. ¿Me mires? She was yelling at me, saying that I made her look really fucking bad in front of Sarah and Ken. This is her twin. This is not my mother. They're fooling me the entire time. This is, what the fuck do you think about Sarah and Ken? She has no fucking clue. She's doing this because they know they're taking advantage of her as well. So, all I know is that y'all took this money. And you want to blame it 100% on my mom's a biological twin. Because you want to be able to return me against me saying I'm the fucking enemy. And that's why. I'm the one that protected Frankie for 7 to 8 of these homosexual rapes. And I was there to count all 10, if not more, 11. I think it was 10 or 11. Maybe more if Frankie spilled the beans. I was there to say when my mom got raped anally by what looked like to be maybe Ivan's grandpa. He said he was Ivan's grandpa. When my mother was watching Frankie being beaten, show up with bruises on the side of his ribs. Now, my mother, biological mother, when I had that murder attempt happen to me, I showed up and covered in blood at my mom's front doorstep. You've already had a murder attempt accomplice with my mother participating in that against my life. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of that violence and have her groom that. Because that's all you're doing, and she's willing to do it. So if you're willing to do that, you're willing to dispose of me and get rid of my life. It doesn't matter how much money in the world. It doesn't matter what you think about anything. That is evil. That is very evil. She was already trying to kick me out. I had fractured ribs. I couldn't breathe for about 4 to 5 weeks at least. I could not expand my ribs because I was kicked violently so bad in my ribs, in my throat and face, and my head stomped on at a cemetery. And I'm covered in blood, and my mom's identical twin is showing up, and they're like, it seemed very much planned and routine. They knew what was going on, she knew what was going on. And so they're dispatching their own team of people to do this to me. So, like I said, I don't want to play a part of it. I'm very scared of this situation, and I don't want to do anything unless Frankie and Julian are there. I really don't. I don't want to. Julian and Frankie have to be there. But, like I said, they took all my dad's money, and I don't think they should have the right. You don't have the right to take my dad's financial house and money and not give me a single fucking word about what the fuck's happened, because you don't know what happened, and you did this on purpose. You're the one that dumped his body and got rid of his poor soul and his old man that did so much for this country and his family. And I don't think that's right.